Hello and welcome, my friends, to Beyond Fame. I am so excited you are here. It is a red letter day. We have a guest who is steaming with talent, and I am so excited he's here. I've got to meet him a few months ago. I took his masterclass on Vanishing Ink, and it was so fun to learn from him and to get to know him through that. And we've become friends after that. So he's really nice, and he's awesome to chat with. This is going to be an excellent interview. So let me introduce him. Peter Samelson insists that he doesn't do magic. He only helps people to see it. He is an illusionist, entertainer, philosopher, blending simplicity and sophistication as he provokes his thoughts and inspires wonder. A recent recipient of the Merlin Award for Lifetime Achievement, and christened the soft-spoken conceptualist of sorcery. Peter, I'm going to have you say that 5 times fast, by the way. By the New York Times, Peter has distinguished himself not only as a magician, but as an artist. He has performed atop of the Great Wall of China for Mexican peasants. We need to talk about that too. I don't know if that's a typo or what. And Grand Prix drivers, Princess Stephanie of Monaco and the Jet Set of Paris, and fishermen mending their nets on the beaches of Cartegena. Peter has also designed for TV, filmed in theater, and has created magic for Sam Mendes production at BAM and the Old Vic in London, and recently for 2 Broadway shows, Leap of Faith and Harvey. He has also created and starred in 3 critically acclaimed off-Broadway shows, The Magician, Paperwork, and Radnevsky's Real Magic. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Peter Samelson. Hey, Peter, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here. Yeah, that bio actually needs to be adjusted a little bit. It's an old one that's has been updated since then. Politically incorrect at this point. So
Maybe we'll have to have Frankie edit that out.
sounds good.
All right.
Sounds good.
How are you? You're in New York.
Yeah, I'm actually in New Jersey, so
Oh, okay.
I I I keep 2 homes up here. So I'm in New Jersey right now. I have an apartment in Bloomfield, New Jersey, which is about 12, 13 miles outside of New York City in the New Jersey side, just on the other side of the Hudson. And I keep it here because it's easy access to the airport, and easy access to get to Newark Airport. It's
Okay.
also easy access to go into the city, and there's both public transportation and I can drive in. So it is ideal for me to do that when I'm going in. And I go in a fair amount, both for work and pleasure. But, we run our Monday Night Magic shows, or were pre-pandemic, running our Monday Night Magic shows every Monday night in New York City.
Wow.
And we can talk a little bit more about that.
Sure.
But then if I'm flying out and doing shows, the Newark Airport is just 20 minutes away. But I keep a place also. We've just bought a new place upstate New York in Woodstock, New York, where my partner Karen has been for quite a while, and we've consolidated everything, and we're now homeowners up in the Woodstock area.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's and how are things? Are things opening up? Are they what's the scene out where you're at?
Yeah, so things are starting to open up. So in New York City itself, the September is the date at which the real Broadway is going to really start coming back fully. We're
Oh,
anticipating Monday Night Magic, our show, which is at the Players Theater at McDougal Street, just between Bleecker and West Third Street in New York City, in the Village, and we've been there now like it's 6, 7 years. We're starting our 25th year, 25 years
wow.
in New York City. It's the longest running off-Broadway magic show in New York history. So,
That's
and we've had
amazing.
350 performers that have passed through and trod our stages over the course of the time. And so this is the thing, it's every Monday night, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But we're scheduled to open up again end of August, beginning of September. At least that's the plan as we stand now.
Um, Limited seating. What are any restrictions or?
Well, this is a really good question. So we'll see where things are. New York is opening up with certain COVID restrictions. So we recommend that people are vaccinated, obviously, and that's the way we are most comfortable. And many people in the tri-state area, we're a very high vaccination rate. So we're feeling fairly safe about that.
Good.
I will tell you that one of the things that's happening now is that I have been going in occasionally and doing shows in New York City. My friend Harrison Greenbaum and Patrick Davis have got a show called Scam Live, which is running on Sunday nights in New York City. And it's small little groups of people, anywhere between about 8, 10 people to about 25 people in individual rooms. It's in a karaoke place. So there are all these little individual karaoke rooms, and we'll go
Oh,
in and
that's
do
cool.
15 minutes of magic and then rotate around to another room and do another 15 minutes of magic. And the last time I was there, and I'll be there again 1 week from today, 1 week from today?
Monday.
No, 2 weeks from today. So I'll be there 2 weeks from today. And again, we'll be working unmasked in that situation. At least that's the
Wow.
plan at this point. So
Very
yeah,
cool. Good for
and
you.
it's really nice. I have to say, I like to work. I perform a lot working with people, getting them involved in what I'm doing. So
Yeah.
it's really nice to be able to see full faces and talk with people and do that.
Yeah.
Um, so that's where we are right now. Yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, why don't you give us an origin story? Tell us about Peter Samelson.
uh, I started as just an idea. So
Okay.
I can pretty much pinpoint seriously when that all happened. That's a long story, but my parents came from Europe. My parents are German refugees. They came out of Switzerland, where my father was going to school, and my mother's mother had uh, fled Germany and set up home in Switzerland. And in 1941, they left Switzerland to come to the United States. It's
Wow.
one of those strange quirks of fate. My father was born in Strasbourg, which is in Alsace-Lorraine. It's just north of Switzerland. It's just right on the border between Germany and France. And
Hmm.
when he was born there, it was German. But when he was applying for a visa to the United States, it was French territory, or it had been.
Okay.
So he was able to come in on the French quota instead of the German quota, which was filled. So through this twist of fate, they were one of the last boats that came out of Europe. It was a small Mediterranean little ship that was pressed into service and was packed to the gills and sailed from Portugal to New York City.
Wow.
And they got off, and my father's a mathematician and went to Princeton, where he worked, became friends with Einstein's assistant and with the Einstein household. And so I grew up in this very academic family. So I grew up in an environment that was surrounded by physicists and mathematicians and linguists, and it was just an amazing situation.
That's so
And
cool.
that meant obviously that there was a lot of pressure on me to perform and to sort of match that stuff. And when I was about 6, I had a great aunt who bought me a magic set. And I was so shocked that it was tricks and not real magic that I pushed it back at her and I said, "You got me the wrong set. This is just not real magic."
That's awesome.
5 years later, I'm in a school, and this is all of those people who are out doing school shows, which I've done my share of as well. All those people who are doing school shows should know that you are often the inspiration for other performers. So there was a magician, I have no idea who it was, but I was in elementary school, 11 years old. Magician came to the school. He did serpent silk and the loda and several other things. And I went home and I said to my mom, "Remember that thing with the magic set where I was all upset? I know it's tricks now. I just want to know how it works." So
Nice.
so
And you
she
and you and you still have the set? You didn't throw it out or anything, huh?
I don't have the set, but what I do have, I
Well,
don't.
I mean when you were 11, you still had the You had the set
No,
then.
I had some things,
Oh,
but
okay.
I was just trying to check it here, but it's upstate New York. I still have the book that she went out and found for me called Modern Magic, as you know, Professor Hoffman,
Oh,
Modern
nice.
Magic, written in 1890, right? So not exactly modern magic at
No.
our time, but still filled with great stuff. There's great things in there, and I built props out of there, an inexhaustible box, and I figured out how to, I had a little load that would hang on the back of a table that I could steal in a handkerchief and produce candies from an empty handkerchief and all that stuff. So yeah, that's where it really started, and that was it. And then from elementary school, I pressed my best friend into service, and we started doing magic shows together and working things. And junior high school, I founded a club. In high school, that continued, and that's how I was when I ended up going to college. It was to study physics, not magic, and I pretty much I didn't leave magic behind, but I'd gotten to a point where I was feeling like magic was all about just fooling people.
Mm,
And and I kind of went, that's not real happy with that. I'd much rather feel like I was contributing to their understanding of the world, so I come out smarter at the end of a show.
right.
So I tried to figure out a way to do that. So
That's awesome. What do you think was that spark that magician created for you when you were 11 that made you want to go back to it?
yeah, that's a really good question, and clearly it wasn't the great theatricality of it. It was for me as a kid wanting to figure out how things work. How was he able to do that?
Yeah.
I'm seeing something which can't be. I have no understanding of how that works. I want to know how it works. And I bet the same thing's true for you, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this is where we are still fascinated, and we'll go and we'll buy tricks because not because we think we're going to do them, but just it's like, well, how the heck does that work?
Yeah.
Right? You know?
Yeah.
So
Exactly. What Okay, so let's ask this, and then I kind of want to branch off
sure.
from what is your definition of talent?
Ooh, that's a really good question. You kind of given me a warning that you were going to ask that, and I don't, and I think the polite version would be to say, well, everybody has talent. It's just a matter of working really hard. But I don't believe that. I think
I don't
that there
either.
are people have real skills and abilities in certain areas, and some people have amazing abilities in certain areas. And I think it's important to recognize that both in yourself and in other people. And it doesn't mean that you can't work and do things, but there's a difference between doing something professionally uh, and doing something for your own pleasure.
Okay.
I, so this is a long way to answer that question, but I went to school, as I said, in California, and I went studying physics. I started out in an advanced physics program,
Hmm.
and at the end of the first year, which was like 2 years all in one, I looked around and I went, there are guys here who are really smart. There are guys here for whom physics is not a slog. It's like something that they get. Sometimes it's hard for them, but they can make poetry out of it. It
Mm.
really is something that they're good at. And for me, it's really hard. And I have to work really, really hard at it. And I chose to leave. I went, I only have one time through in this life, and I'd like to do something in this world that leaves the world a better place.
Awesome.
And with physics, yeah, I would make a living at it. I would be okay at it. I'd do good. I'd get hired. All that stuff. I'm sure I would have been fine. But
Right.
you know, with I meandered through into theater, thinking that if I'm in a theater and I'm doing a show and there's one person in that audience that walks out affected by that show, then I've done my job. I've done something for that person. And that's a really good thing, and I think there's a chance for me to do that. So I decided I would go work on that and try to make that happen.
So is magic a talent?
For me,
Yeah.
it's hard work also, but and I'm very critical of myself. I'm one of my worst critics, and I have to be patient with myself. There are things that are hard for me to do technically, and there are things that are hard for me to do if I'm working on writing a piece.
Okay.
And that's why oftentimes I'll turn to somebody that I trust, either a director or another performer uh, who I can rely on to help guide me through some of the obstacles that I'm not seeing my way past. And I'll give you a quick example of that.
Yeah.
So I worked on a piece in the master class. I talked about a piece. I taught a piece called Love Locks, and
Hmm.
it's this combination of things, right? So it took me many years, and I spent the first 3 years doing a really bad job of it. It was not a good routine. I mean, honestly, I look at that and I go, wasn't good, really wasn't good. But I kept putting it out there. I kept trying. I kept, putting it on stage. And finally, my buddy Ossie Wind turned to me and said, "Peter," oh, because in the thing that I was working on, I had 5 different locks and 5 different keys that were there and all this sort of stuff, and it was just busy. And Ossie said, "Peter, one lock." I said, "Yeah, but the story is about the love locks, the locks that people put on bridges, and there are thousands of those. So I got to have like lots of locks." He said, "No, one lock, just one lock." And I thought about it and I said, "Okay, I'll give it a try." And he was absolutely right. And after years of working with that, the clarification of finding uh, that insight was necessary because I needed to have that guidance of somebody who, and Ossie is a real talent, He's got a vision, he's got an eye. He's remarkable.
Yeah,
Um,
he's amazing.
he really is. And so that helped me get to where I needed to be, excuse me, get to where I needed to be on that routine. And I had another friend who helped me with some of the scripting on it as well. So there are times when you'll work with people and they'll give you little pieces, or you work with a director, um, and then take it out there. So talent is something that means that there's sort of an innate ability towards something, that you have a tendency, you have a bent towards it. Feels like it sort of comes naturally to you,
Okay.
um, and then it's a matter of learning the technique, because talent alone won't get you there. Then there's the problem of getting the technique down so that you have the technical skills to realize your vision.
Okay. We were talking about this a little bit beforehand. Let's say you discover your talent, whether it's musical or magical or whatever it may be. Let's say you find you have a talent for it and you start working at it, and you want to pursue it. What would you tell people to do as far as pursuing and to create those moments to go out and perform and to take it to the next level? How would you tell them that?
Well, just as I was telling you about the years of my failing, I think it's important to try and just keep doing the things you're doing, to keep working at them, because only by working at these things and performing as often as you can are you going to get better at it. Because ultimately, Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours or 20,000 hours. It's really is, you need to just put in the time. It's the stage time, the flight time that really helps a lot. Um, just repetitive doing something without
Mhm.
thinking about it um, is not always helpful. So one of the things that I did was I would record all of my performances, and then and in the early years when I was out working cruise ships, I would record all my things, and then I had other performers that were on the ship who were really helpful, and we would go back and look at the performances, and they would go, "See what you did there? See, that's wrong." So at the end of this piece, you need to find a way to end with just you on stage. So you can have a natural talent. You can work on the technical side of it so that you have the ability to do what you have to do to make the magic happen. Uh, and then you need to be able to craft or shape that performance in a way that maximizes it as a theatrical piece. And when I say that theatrical piece, I don't necessarily mean it has to be dramatic or even that it has to have a script. But every bit of magic is a theatrical piece. It's got a beginning, a middle, and end. It's got an arc to it. You know, people become engaged. They become interested in it. So the real point here is to continue to do it. If you can, try to record it. At the very least, when you're done performing it, take some time to think about what you've just done and try to remember, even make notes on it as to what it is that worked and what didn't work.
Yeah, I like that.
So
Also you talked about people, the one lock, Aussie when saying one lock, you know, writing, helping you write your script. How would you find these people to help you with your talent?
well, you know, one of the things that's interesting is that sometimes it's just a matter of finding people that you respect, that you look to, and you sort of say, "Oh, this person's really, I really like what they're doing." Uh, and not everybody who is a good performer is a good teacher. And
Right.
there are people that are good teachers. So, you know, really the idea is to find somebody that you can learn from oftentimes. You know, for me in my early years, there was this um, in high school and even junior high school, having a magic club meant that we were all getting together, but we almost always had like a mentor. There was like a guide. We had, you know, somebody who would
Who
host the
was your
meetings.
who was your mentor?
So, you know, back in high school, it was a man named Charles Rolfs, and Charles was a member of the local IBM, and we used to meet monthly at his house. He had a huge collection. He was a great collector as well. So he had a huge collection of both resource books and things. And so we would perform for each other in that situation. We would be critical and give critique on it. And he would guide the critique because he had enough knowledge and seen enough magic going on. He would invite people in that were coming through to lecture for us,
Mhm.
and we would pay for that, you know. And then we would try to do things like go to Abbott's Magic, you know, the get together, or down to Columbus to the Magi Fest. And so in these situations, to try to go to places to see other people perform. So it's really how do you find a mentor? These days, it's in some ways easier because you can do lessons over Zoom,
That's a great
you
question.
know, and there are ways to find people that you look to, you know, and so there are people out there who are teaching, and so find somebody you really respect, and you can actually just approach them and say, "Do you teach? You know, I'd like to hire you to work with me as a coach." Mike Close, you know, who works with Penn and Teller on the
Mhm.
Foolish shows, you know, um, I know that he sometimes is willing to work with performers to help them clarify and shape their things. I mean, he comes out of a background of doing a lot of performing. So that's where a situation where he's a very valuable person, for example. So Mike Close would be one person you might talk to. Some people that I know, like my buddy Jamie Swiss, is a great teacher as well. You know, but he doesn't take many students. You know, it's sort of a situation like that. And there are other people out there that are there, and so you know, look at the people that are performing. Look at the students of those people, if they have students. See if you like what you're seeing, and if you do, then say, okay, I'd like to work with you. See what you can get.
All they can say is no, but maybe they'll say yes.
Exactly right. It's worth
Yeah.
trying, you know. And then pay attention, you know, if you are following their guidance and you do this and you know, after a period of time of working with them, do you feel like you've improved? You know, not every teacher is right for you. They may
Right.
not be teaching you the style you need. So for me, that early years was worth working with that. And then I went away to college, and I have to admit there was a part of me that I turned my back on magic because as I said, I felt like it was just about fooling people,
Hmm.
and I wanted to do more. And I got a chance to see Tony Slidini perform, and I was just blown away by Tony's work. I saw him work, and there was, instead of moves and gimmicks and stuff, it was there was a purity to his work. If you've ever seen videos of watching Tony work, there's just like it's like he does nothing. I watched him do coins through the table, and there were no moves.
Wow.
Everything was totally justified and natural. And because there were no moves, what I was seeing was shocking real magic. It was like there was no possible explanation.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
you know, so sometimes you study people instead of studying with them.
I
So
like that.
look at
I like
them
that.
and think about what they're doing and why it works, and you know, can that
So do you
help
so
you?
so do you feel for you that it is magic your talent?
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it, that you hope that you're making use of your talent. So my background is in theater,
Like,
and
well, and that's why I asked, because I know you're a triple threat performer, and so what tell me how you enlist your talents in order from 1 to 3, and where
oh
does magic
boy.
lie?
Well, magic at this point is what I'm doing. I
Okay.
am I that's to me, it is my theater at this point. So I moved to New York to do theater, and then I found that most people who were making their money in theater in New York were making their money by selling things, by doing commercials.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do that. So that wasn't really my goal. So I decided, okay, well, what am I going to do? And the magic sort of reemerged as the thing that interested me, and I kind of followed it. So because I
Well,
followed it, it became my path.
what was the turning point for you that brought you back into it then? What made you see the light of not just fooling people, but hey, this is what I want to do, and take it to the next step?
So, I'd seen Slidini, and I'd seen the power of doing magic that was really good magic, and magic that um, was magic that kind of allowed an audience to become part of the performance in a way, So um, that was the first step for me. And then I took time after college, and I went to Europe, and I traveled around, and I went there to look at theater. And I was in Prague, and Prague was still under communist control. The Dubček regime had been booted out, and the Soviets had come back in and basically put their iron boot back on Prague. Uh, and yet, in the midst of that, I was seeing theater, and even though I couldn't understand the language, I was seeing theater that was revolutionary and I found powerful to look at and watch. And I realized that sometimes, uh, in periods where there is not just oppression, but where there's danger and where there's stress, some of the best theater comes out of that. If things are all good and wonderful and beautiful, there's not a lot of reason to make theater. You make bright and funny musicals. You don't make
Right.
great dramatic theater. So so there has to be this spark for what goes on there, and that was kind of the inspiration. So I moved to New York then, and found that I wasn't really getting commercial. I started doing improvisational theater with some folks here in New York, and did some interesting theater with them, which was really great. And then realized that there was huge underground theatrical movement of alternative theaters, you know,
Right.
avant-garde theater work. People like Mabu Mines and Joseph Chaikin's The Open Theater, and there was a group called the Talking Band whose work I really liked, and there was a group called Performing Artists for Nuclear Disarmament, PAND, and I got involved with that, and I realized that I could start doing magic that related thematically, became metaphorical for the points we were trying to make. So that became kind of an interesting, way to
Yeah.
use magic, and not didactically. Like you don't want to preach, I'm not here
Right.
to, like but to put stuff out there that hopefully will make people think about things. So
Although,
that was going on.
although, although you do have the Church of
I do.
Magic,
Yep.
so you are doing some preaching.
I am happy to preach. Absolutely. I will tell you what I need to have you do. Reach in your pocket, grab a few coins, because we're going to do a collection in just a few minutes here. So,
That's awesome.
absolutely. Yeah.
Let's take just a little bit of a different route here,
Sure.
and I played a game last week with Luke Dancy and I call it precognog, where I try to guess your answers. But
Okay.
we just met a little bit ago, so I'm not going to embarrass myself and try to guess your answers, because I don't think I know you that well. So I'm just going to do a rapid fire and just ask you some questions here. So you ready for this?
Fair enough. I'm ready.
And just quick responses. What is your favorite on the spot magic trick to do for people?
The Phoenix.
Phoenix. Favorite magician?
Favorite magician at this point?
Past or present?
Past or present? Oh, wow. Slidini passed. Present at this point? Penn and Teller, actually, probably.
I almost started right Teller, so I probably would have got that one.
You would have gotten
that. Favorite Netflix binge?
For me right now, I'm watching Elementary, the old series. So yeah,
Sherlock
that's
Holmes,
kind of,
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
kind of a modern Elementary. Yeah, which ties. We'll talk more about that. But I think we should talk a little bit about why do magicians like mysteries, mystery stories, and especially murder mysteries and that sort of thing, and science fiction, that sort of stuff. Okay, keep going.
Okay, all right. And then favorite musical group or artist?
Favorite musical group right now. So boy, my taste is a little weird. So it's if I need a piece of music, if I need to listen to a piece of music, it's usually the Colin concerts by Keith Jarrett. So that for me is what that's my go-to piece of music that happens in there. And then I go, I'm not young, so my stuff goes back. So I'm listening to Cream, and I'm listening to, the band, and I'm listening to music from that era. That's really
Excellent.
my favorite.
I like
And that
it.
and very honestly, although not currently playing, I'm classically trained trumpet player. So,
What?
so I listen to classical music.
So you are. So I always get people. I tell people I'm a magician, and they go, "Oh, what music? What instrument do you play?"
Right.
And so you could produce a trumpet and say I play the trumpet. So there you go. And final question: what is a favorite book, magic or non-magic?
Favorite book. Wow. There are so many, and the question is it something that I've just read, or is it one that goes on? So I have to admit, I also so George Luis Borges and Italo Calvino are kind of my two favorite authors. If I had to sort of look at those, so there's Calvino has got a whole series of beautiful little short science fiction-y type of stories. So I love his work there, and there's a wonderful book that he wrote called If on a Winter's Night, or On a Winter's Night, or If on a Winter's Night. So there's that, and all the Borges, the labyrinth stories, all of that sort of stuff. And then sort of current author at this point, probably Neil Gaiman at this point.
What does he
Although,
write?
so Gaiman writes, he's write a whole series of books. Good Omens is one of his things that's turned into a movie thing. Coraline, the movie was
Oh,
out
okay.
of his writing that came out of that. So he's written the the lake at the end of the lane. He's written Shadowlands. There's his Gaiman's done a huge swath of sort of writing, and he had an interesting comment on the role of science fiction in the world of creativity, and he tells the story of the Chinese who were realizing that they were great at reproducing things that have
Hmm.
been created, but weren't at the sort of the forefront of creating things for themselves.
Okay.
They decided they were going to fund a study to try and figure out why that was. And they went and talked to all these people that were sort of at the very forefront of creative in the technology world and other things. And what tied them together, what seeming to be a theme throughout that, was that all of these people uh, were deeply immersed in science fiction early on, and that kind of science fiction was not looked on highly in China. So then they realized that that was one of the things that really needed to be explored, brought back into the culture as a way of generating creativity. And so that means that there are people like Heinlein and Arthur C. Clarke, and Asimov, whose writing is really important. So, I'm sort of I tend to read a lot of things like murder mysteries and science fictions, as well as other sort of more magic books and things along
Cool.
those.
I'm gonna throw. That was my 5 questions, but I'm gonna throw in a bonus.
Okay,
I'm gonna throw in a bonus question because you
bonus
talked a
question.
little bit about favorite science fiction movie of all time.
Well, now, okay, so that's kind of a loaded question, I mean, for me, I'd be amiss if I didn't say it was Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Well, I
So
knew you were
and
gonna say that.
the original version of that. But I still have a deep, abiding fondness for Blade Runner, the original version of Blade Runner.
Nice.
You know, but there are other ones that are up there. Alien, the very first Alien. This is that happens. This idea of terror and science fiction are there. They're just a lot of the wonderful science fiction movies that are out there. So,
Awesome. Love it.
yeah.
Love it. Love it. Peter, let's say you find your talent, you've been practicing at it, you find that you're good at it. What are some of the steps that somebody could take to start marketing themselves toward getting the paid gigs type of things?
Wow. There are people who you can talk to who are really good at marketing and marketing themselves and doing this. Um, my path has been a bit peripatetic. I mean, I've just sort of been all over the place, and in many ways, um, it's been a situation where things kind of have dropped in my lap. In many ways, it's being ready for the opportunities. You know,
Okay.
so I moved to New York, and for me in New York, I went around to bars and restaurants, and I started doing anything I could do to do that. The woman I was living with at the time, my partner at the time, was an actress and a mime, and we started doing stage shows. So here we are in a situation where we wanted to do theater, and nobody was hiring us to do theater. So Barbara and I had a distant cousin, Rick Poole, and we started talking. And there was a mutual relative who, up in the Adirondacks, had a museum where there was a house that we could use for the summer that would hold 10 people. We put together a cast of 10 people, including the three of us, and put together 3 different shows to take up to the Adirondacks to do during the summer. Okay, so what I'm saying is that oftentimes you make your own luck by just doing things, creating it. If it's not there for you, make it happen. Do your own shows. So we're doing these shows, and it turns out that the very first place that we were going to be performing, we had 3 shows. One of them was a melodrama. This place had the melodrama, somebody come through and done it a year before. So we couldn't
Mhm.
do it. So we said, what are we going to do? I said, well, I've got a cast of people. Let's do a magic show. So we did a show called Madame Salabi's Magic Theater and Cabaret, and it was this wonderful evening of magic, and I had this group of people to do this. So this was, we did this throughout the summer, and there were a series of other things that happened. I was working for Holland America Cruises, not as a performer. I was working in their sales office,
Wow.
selling space on cruises.
Oh,
Travel
okay.
agents would call up and go, "Hey, I need to book a cruise. I need these. I've got 2 people. They're really good friends of mine. They should, and I was selling the cabins for the stuff. And I helped book one of the first cruises that went into China, and it was just this amazing thing. At the Christmas party for that, a magician came and performed, and I went, "Wow, great!" Turns out he's performing on the cruise ship. I had no idea you could do that. And I
Wow.
thought, wow, that's really interesting. And a couple months later, they laid off half the company. They kept me on for a while, long enough for me to be able to get unemployment insurance. I started collecting unemployment insurance and started doing magic. I ended up getting hired to design magic for a thing called Project Educational Theater that toured out of New Orleans for 10 weeks. We performed for 80,000 people. Came back, got hired to be one of the resident magicians at the Magic Townhouse in New York, was doing shows through there and through people I knew. I'm working there. I've been doing stage shows with my partner. We've been out doing colleges and universities. So where I first met Jeff McBride was at a college booking conference.
Wow.
So we packaged it up, we're at the college booking conference, and we're out there selling our shows. Uh, After the days are over, all the college students who are there to book the shows are hanging out at the hotel up in like Grossinger's or wherever we were up there, up in the Catskills area. And who hangs out at one of these parties? This young kid. Turns out it's Jeff McBride. First time I'd ever met him. And we're doing magic in the room together. He's like feeding me props and coins and stuff. And he'd vanish something and hand it to me. I'd reproduce it. It was like, wow, who are
That's
you? You're
that's
just
awesome.
amazing. And it's the first time I heard about Eugene Berger. So, I think the answer is go out there, find ways to work. And if you don't find yourself getting hired for a job, put on a show, do the show yourself, find a place to put it on, make it happen. Just really just do it for yourself. I rented a nightclub across the street from me and started doing formal close-up shows in New York, you know
Wow.
so and doing that, and then I was doing, and then I'm doing Monday, I'm doing the Magic Townhouse, and these people come and they say, "Hey, loved your show." I went, "Well, thank you very much." They said, "Well, we're booking for a cruise." I went, "Cruises?" And they went, "Yeah, and we'd like to hire you to work a cruise." And I said, "Well, you just saw me only do close-up magic." And they said, "Well, yeah, but you have a stage show, right?" I went, "Well, yeah, of course I have a stage show. Yeah, of course I do. Absolutely." They said, "Well, okay, we'd like to have you work on this cruise. It's going to be a world cruise going from Los Angeles to Hong Kong." And it's like I'm going, "Are you?
Yeah,
You're just
what?
looking at me?" It's like I couldn't believe it. And they didn't call, and then they said, "Call me," and they finally called me back, and because I didn't call them, and it was like they said, "We're going to call you by 5, but they're in Chicago, so 5 is actually 6
Oh,
o'clock my time, so they call at
right.
5:30. I thought they're never going to call. This whole thing came together, you know
Wow.
and the other thing is that I went, we're talking about the alternative theater, so I'm doing, there was this wonderful alternative scene of alternative theaters in New York City, and I would go and watch shows, and the Talking Band, which I mentioned before, was one of them, and they were absolutely fabulous. There was just this most incredibly creative, wonderful, earthy human show. And I went up after them and I said, you know, you guys are incredible. You guys are just amazing. I'm a magician. I have a background in theater, but I also design magic for theater shows and stuff like that. If you're ever doing a show where you need a magician or you need magic effects,
Wow.
call me. I'll be happy to work with you. And they did. And we worked together. And it was thanks to them that, and Paul Zimmet, who was the director, who years later, he and I collaborated on Radnevsky's Real Magic that ran at La Mama. So,
Tell me about, you mentioned China a few times, so tell me about performing on the Great Wall of China.
So this is the first cruise that I'm working is this Los Angeles to Hong Kong. And I go, oh, this is really great. This is Hong Kong. And I get off and I realize that I'm like right next door to China. And on the cruise, you kind of go into China a little bit that goes here. And the next year, I'm scheduled to pick up a ship in Hong Kong and then sail all the way around to India. And so I went, well, I can't pass up this opportunity. I need to go in. I need to meet with the acrobatic troupe in China, and I need to go out there and I need to go see what's going on. And I reached out to Mark Wilson, and Mark had already in his plans. He was already planning on performing. He'd already got a show set up to work in China, so he wasn't very happy about me poaching on his territory. So he didn't provide me with a lot of help. But I was able to work it, and I actually was there before he was, which was fascinating, in spite of that. So I actually went to Hong Kong early, and I flew into Beijing, and I got a chance to meet with the acrobatic troupe, and I saw the shows, and we hung out afterwards, and we're backstage talking with a translator back and forth, and we're sort of going through the polite things about this, and I say, well, what was it like working, during the Cultural Revolution? And they said, well, it was difficult because you had to explain the magic after the show because it was considered elitist. It's considered elitist to have the knowledge of how this worked and not share it to everybody else. I said, well, that was really awful. What did you do? He said, well, we lied. we just didn't tell them how we were really doing it. I went, yeah, that's great. And we started doing magic for each other and sharing secrets back and forth, at which point the guy turned to the translator and said, you have to leave now. We don't need you. Get out of here. You can't watch this. And so we were doing magic back and forth. And as part of that trip, I was actually up on the Great Wall and did a performance there. So.
And was it just one trick, or you did 2 or 3?
Yeah, it was basically it's like doing a street show, basically that.
Did you do the Chinese linking rings?
I did. I thought, Coles to Newcastle.
There you go.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Very but
cool.
I made friends there in Hong Kong who are still friends of mine. Albert Tam over there is still a friend of mine, and I remember I'd gone and lectured there, again later on, and Albert a couple years ago wrote to me and said, I had a fire at my place. I lost one of the props that you were making and selling. Do you have any more of those? And I sent it to him as well. So Albert is now one of the big people who's doing promoting shows into China and doing tours in China and magic competitions there. So yeah.
You could it'll be like the Olympics. You can watch it on TV, but you can't actually attend. So we'll see.
Now, yeah.
Now.
But Mike Miller was putting together tours that were going over to China and doing this great work. They had to close because of COVID, but they'll be back again. They'll be back doing it.
My friend Richard Hatch, he texted me a question earlier this week. I know Richard really well.
Very well. Yeah.
he just wanted to know where you are a triple threat performer. Do you have a preference on magical format or venues?
Great choice. So great question. So at this point, I have to say that I'm being very practical about this, which is that in my youth, I traveled with a full 2-hour stage show, 3 acts, 2 hours, full stage show, big illusions, other stuff as a solo performer. So the illusions that I did, I had to do as a single performer. So I never had an assistant on stage that I cut in half or anything like that. So I had to, so anyway, so I was traveling with 15 crates of stuff. I had an assistant that was a hidden double for me at one point, and a stage manager, lighting designer who called the show. And that was colleges and universities and doing all that sort of stuff. I sort of then was on cruise ships, and I was traveling with like one trunk, a big bag that would then open out, and another bag, because when you fly, you have to have with you on the flight enough material to do a full hour show. So you just have to, in case they lose your luggage. You just have to have it with you. You should wear your suit.
Gotta have a backup.
Exactly. So at the time, we were all working with live charts, live sheet music. So you travel with your charts and magic. Let's carry on. These days, I am doing smaller venues. Still some, still some a couple hundred people, but I'm really enjoying the smaller venues that are
Yeah.
here. So one of my favorite things to do now, it's very challenging, but it's really fun to do, is my friend Todd Robbins has got this show going called Speakeasy Magic in New York City. And small groups at a table of 10 or 12 people at a table, magician does 12 minutes and then rotates, resets and rotates. And it's nice working in an environment where you're sitting there and you can see people's faces and the impact you can have on people that are sitting right there, because they're seeing stuff they've never seen before.
Right.
They're seeing incredible close-up magic right in front of them, and that is really powerful. Um, so that's one of my favorites, and the other are venues like our shows at Monday Night Magic, which is basically, it's a small stage show. We hold 212 people maximum in the theater. Um, so that kind of show I like very much, because
Just because it's so much on a personal level with the
yeah,
audience. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So you're close enough that you can really see people, and afterwards you can just be there and chat with them, or do that. So it's yeah, I like that a lot. Those are my favorite things right now. And they offer different things. The Speakeasy Magic, it's got to be high impact. I do my smoke routine at that routine. I mean, believe it or not, I walk up to the table and I do the smoke routine. I do the ring and rope and ring and box thing that I taught in the master class. I use body snatchers. I use Phoenix. Um, so I'm doing stuff there that I've worked on for a long time and sort of distilled, you know.
Yeah.
So
I want to ask you this, because I know you have a couple of awesome performances where you really make moments for people. What are maybe just one or two moments for you that just touched you personally, that just made you think, this is right, this is why I'm doing this?
do you mean in my performances?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just something that you've done that just hit home for you, that's just said, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Well, I'm going to tell you, the first one I will tell you is a negative story,
Okay.
an embarrassment. So there was that time when I was traveling with a big stage show, and in the beginning of the show, I would come out in a full, it looked like an impresario outfit. I would have a Borsellino hat. I still have it over there. I have a Borsellino hat and a white scarf around, like a coat thrown over my shoulders like a cape, and full tuxedo, and I'd come out and I'd spin around and I would do stuff, and and I came out at this one thing, and it was in Reston, Virginia, and the stage was a semicircular thrust stage, and then there was one step, and then a second step, and there was seats. So the people are like right there.
Okay.
And I came out to the front of the stage, and I did a spin, and my foot caught, and I fell, and I fell,
Oh,
tumbled
no.
over. I
Oh,
tumbled
no.
over, and I fell down the first step and down the second step, and I'm lying in front of the seats, and I look up, and there's this little girl looking down at me in complete horror, as if
Yikes.
this magician has just he's feet of clay. He's just fallen in front of her, and it was like to pull yourself up, to stand up, and to keep going on in that situation
Yeah.
was like it was like how do you do that? How do you just how do you keep going? And when you just failed so miserably in this point. And I had to spend the rest of that show basically trying to make it up to that little girl so that by the end of the show, she would walk out of there going, "Oh, this was a great experience." I hope I did it. I may have.
I bet.
So
I bet. I bet you did.
that's one of those situations where you do this. And real quickly, the last thing is this. I've worked really hard to try and make the magic that I do meaningful. Some of
Yeah.
them have succeeded, some have not. At the end of Lovelocks, I get a guy to go down on his knees to put a ring back on his wife's finger, and that happened because I was doing the routine without doing that in Vegas and at a part of a magic convention. And the woman, as he went to put the ring back on her finger, she went, "Oh no, he's going down on his knees to put that on." And I went, "Wow." And I asked her afterwards, I said, "Well, what was that about?" She said, when he proposed to me, he never went down on his knees. And we're back here, we're renewing our vows, and damn it, he's going down on his knees.
That's
And I
hilarious.
and I thought, that's a keeper. And so
Yeah.
that's why I put it into the show. And so now, every time I do that, and I snap a picture of that moment, and then I send it to the couple afterwards.
That's awesome.
And that to me it just feels really good. Um, two other real quick ones if you already want
Yeah.
answers on those.
Yeah. No, go for it.
Back in the 70s, I was hired to do myself, Jack Adams, and Michael Albright. Michael's still around. Jack's not with us anymore. We're hired to do a touring show for Revlon Cosmetics, and there was a thing
Okay.
called Color Magic. And color magic involved doing shades of lipstick, and we had this big phantom tube that would break open. There looked like a lipstick, and then silks would come out of it, and they were all in the shades of the lipsticks. And we had
Oh,
a
nice.
flip book, a coloring book, that sort of stuff. Anyway, the last minute they said, "Hey, can you do something with this?" And it was an umbrella. And it was a regular umbrella, a Chaz umbrella. And we said, sure, okay, all right. So I went to my partner at the time, this is Barbara, and I said, we need to write this. So we wrote a thing called Lady Fair and Mr. Smooth, and it's a love story. And it's the one-way transposition. So it's mutilated parasol with a real umbrella. And it's a love story. And I bring up a woman from the audience and a guy from the audience who don't know each other. And it's a story about the two of them. And they go off and they fall in love. And he's got this umbrella. She's got this handbag. And they start talking about their love and their thing. And then they start arguing with each other about whose career they're going to follow. One person stays home and sort of be home life. And one person and it's like who's his, hers, his. And he stomps off. And eventually everything changes place. Right. And he ends up with this umbrella just has the silks and she's got the cover. So even though it's raining, she's nice and dry, but he's like may look good, but he's all wet.
That's
And
awesome.
I toured with this, and one of the things was it was early 70s, and it was one of these things to be able to do that I felt that I could find mixed race couples.
Mm,
And yeah, and
wow.
and I realized, okay, this is something that I, as a magician, I'm creating this image of what's possible. Is it possible to have a mixed race couple, and have them in love, and have them, because at the end of this thing, as I say, this is not the way for them to solve their problems, but they will work out their problems. They'll make it back together again. For now, let's just thank our two fabulous actors up here as they move forward in life. So, so you can create these images of what's possible and acceptable. And Norman Lear talks about this when he did All in the Family, when they said, well, why are you doing this thing about Archie Bunker, this real right-wing redneck? Why is that? He said, well, the thing about comedy is that you can say anything you want to as long as you package it between two laughs. And I realized that magic's the same way. We have this
Yeah,
opportunity to create these visions about what's acceptable. You can say what you want to say as long as you do it within this context of this magic world. And it doesn't have to be, like I said, didactic, not preachy. But
right.
here was this way. I wasn't preaching about this, but just by using this and creating the example, you now create this world in which this exists. So
Nice. I like
the
that. Yeah,
imagery of magic gets used for that. So there you go.
that's awesome. Very cool. Um, One of our spectators in the chat wants to know if magic disappeared tomorrow, would you be able to fall back on your physics career?
Oh, heavens no. Heavens no. Oh, no. No, 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 no. No, physics is a language. And I mean, I've gone back to my Feynman books, and on the series of the magic, and it's like I've lost that facility because the mathematics in advanced physics is really, really tough. I mean, it was hard for me when I was really on top of it, when I was really working it every day.
Right.
But it's like many other things, if you're not using it, it can get lost. Funny story, my dad was a mathematician, and at one point he was teaching all these advanced courses, and at one point he had to go back and teach undergraduate mathematics. And he said it was the hardest thing in the world to go back and teach simple mathematics because he just wasn't using it, and he just had he had to work on it to get himself up to date on it again.
That's funny. Well, let's do some wrap up questions. We're about to
Okay.
we're probably a little over the hour mark, but it's been a fast hour and been amazing. So, um, where do you see yourself? What's going on in the next 5 years? And just real quick too, because you mentioned Monday Night Magic. You're in your 25th year, so congratulations.
Exactly. So,
And
I'm still performing there on a regular basis.
you got a big
Yeah.
event tomorrow night.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that's right. So tomorrow night, which is the 19th, am I right about this? I think, yeah, July
Mm,
19th. Yeah.
yes.
So tomorrow night, we are doing sort of our kickoff of our 25th season of Monday Night Magic. So we've completed 24 years. We're starting our 25th year. In a year, we will have had 25 full years. So this is the beginning of our 25th year. And so we've
Wow.
got lots of people that are going to be on. So, Alex Boyce is going to be on, and Ryan Kane will be on. I'm going to do a little something that's on there. Eric Diddleman will be on. Adam Rubin will be there. Francis Minotti will be there as well. So it's going to be, who am I? Mike Patrick will be there
Wow.
also. So
Oh, the cast.
it's going to be a great little get together for that. So we've been doing Monday Night Magic live online, and our formula for Monday Night Magic in a live format is opening act of about 10 to 12 minutes, a middle act of about 20, 22 minutes, and a headliner doing about 35 to 45 minutes,
Wow.
with an MC who also does about 10 minutes in there, and then we have close-up magic at intermission at 2 to 3 locations within the theater. So people are really seeing a full show. And as I said, we've had like
Yeah.
350 magicians from around the world. Some of the best names of magic, have come through. Guys from the illusionists have come on, performed on this. We've had guys on America's Got Talent who would come in and try out the material on our stage before they went in and did it, on the live television shows. It's been great, way back in the beginning when Jay Marshall and Billy McComb would come in, and do some stuff. Johnny Thompson came through and
Wow.
performed for us. I mean, it's
That's
been
cool.
it's been great. Raymond Crow came through, Colin Cloud, So I mean, we've been really having, it's been
Yeah, a
Raphael
lot of
Benatar,
people.
Boris Wilde, I mean, and this all became because of John Lenihan over in England, who started up Monday Night Magic, which he did twice a year. And my business partner, Michael Chout, called up Lenihan and said, "Hey, I understand you're doing this thing called Monday Night Magic. We'd like to start a New York branch of that, you know?"
Wow,
He said, "Well, I do it twice a year." We said, "Well, we're going to do it more often than that."
that's
And
cool.
we realized we needed to do it weekly. So we've been doing a weekly show with 3 acts plus at least 2 close-up performers plus an MC every
That's
week,
impressive.
going into our 25th year. Yeah, it's not
Uh,
easy.
is tomorrow night sold out? Can people get tickets?
You
How
can
can,
get tickets. Yeah, there's tickets available through Stellar.
okay.
Um, and if I'm not mistaken, members of the Magic Castle, there's a discount code that's been posted up there for that. Um, so you can find it on the Stellar website. MondayNightMagic.com is another way you can link to that. So you can see who's going to be on and what the shows are coming up. And
Okay.
go check it all
Well,
out. It's a
send
great show.
send me a link and we'll put it in the show notes, and then
I shall do that.
people can just click on it. So,
Thank you. Thanks.
What's the next 5 years hold for you? Are there any more books in the works for you?
Oh, yes. Yes, unfortunately, I'm really negligent on getting this done, but Theatrical Close-Up will be republished with some modifications and updates on that. All
Excellent.
of the essays that I did for MUM, the 12 unholy essays that won me an award for that writing, is going to be in that book. And then a lot of the material that I taught in the master class, plus other things, will be
Oh,
in there,
cool.
including the smoke routine. The snowstorms in there. I will tip the smoke that's in there. All the body snatchers, plus the update for 2021. The thread piece, the heartstrings is in there.
Nice.
There's a lot of material, and yeah, that's in the works. Yeah.
That'll be packed. What else? What else?
Uh, Live touring shows. I mean, around. I'll be in Pittsburgh at Liberty Magic in April of 2022. I'm going to be at the Keller Theater over Halloween this coming fall. Mystique Dining will see me at some point, I think, during the course of this.
That's where I'll
House of
be able to get to
Cards.
see is Mystique
Yeah,
Dining. So,
yeah, yeah, that's scheduled to be there. House of
okay.
Cards in Nashville is scheduled for the early December at this point. So the live shows are starting to, really start to happen again. So we'll
How
see. I hope to keep performing for, for years to come. So
we hope magic doesn't disappear tomorrow, and I don't think it will.
I
So,
don't think it will. No, I don't think it will.
how can people get a hold of you, Peter?
You'll find me up on Facebook.
Okay.
You can find me at samelsonmagic.com. You can write to me. Feel free to write to me at psamelson@gmail.com.
Okay.
Easiest thing to do.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's the easiest way
Well,
to do it. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and that sort of stuff, but I don't post a lot on those.
I am going to introduce one new feature to my show, and next week I have David Jonathan,
Great.
who is a creator and has made a lot of awesome magic. And so I would like to ask you, what question would you like to ask David Jonathan?
I would really like to know what kind of experience he has and what it's been like working with Dan Harlan.
Mm,
And what that
okay.
creative process is like, because they've collaborated on some stuff, and I think Dan is just this amazing guy, and and I think the two of them have seemed to mesh really, really well. So I would
Yeah.
love to see what that creative process is like, and what it's like working with Dan, and how that's different than working alone. So
Awesome. Okay, great. We'll
yeah,
ask him that. And yeah, he's
good.
he's just such a nice guy too. He's really a nice guy.
And
So
real clever,
yeah,
really clever.
very
Yeah.
clever. Well, Peter, and also for my spectators watching too, throughout the week, if you'll comment your questions on the feed, and then that way I can prep them for our guest next week, who is David Jonathan. So,
Right.
Peter, it has been a pleasure. You are a great friend, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out and visit with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for this lovely chat. Thanks for letting me ramble on.
Anytime, my friend. All right, well, take
Sounds
care
great.
out in New Jersey, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
bye-bye.